So my name is Misty Allison. I live in East Palestine, Ohio, about a mile from where the train derailment occurred on February 3rd, 2023. I live with my husband and our two kids. At the time of the train derailment, our daughter Audrey was 1 and our son Blake was 7. And it has been a whirlwind of an experience. The night that the train derailment happened, we were at home doing the whole bedtime hustle, as I like to say, with our kids. We received a family group text that said that a train derailed in town. And initially what I thought was that a car went through the train crossing and got hit by the train. We were concerned at first, but could have never dreamed the aftermath that we experienced then and what we're still experiencing now. So I remember I was putting our kids to bed. We kept hearing sirens, and my husband said, I want to go down to the bottom of our driveway. And we're tucked in a residential neighborhood behind the high school, a mile away from the train derailment. And so I said, sure, go down the bottom of the driveway, take the dog out, and never dreamed that he would see anything. And as I was putting my son to bed, I received a text message from him in our family group chat, and I will never forget what I saw. It was just a huge fireball at the end of our driveway. And at that point in time, even though I didn't know everything that was happening with all those chemicals on the train, I knew that this was a life-changing experience. And I was absolutely terrified. But that first night, I was just terrified that the city of East Palestine, or the village of East Palestine, was going to be engulfed in flames, like the Great Chicago Fire all of those years ago. The American Red Cross was set up at the high school for those who did have to evacuate within that 1 mile radius. Because we are slightly over 1 mile away, we were told to stay at home and shelter in place. My husband and I talked about whether or not we should evacuate that night, but because the American Red Cross was setting up at the high school and we lived directly behind the high school, we just assumed that it was safe to stay at home, because why would the American Red Cross set up at the high school if everything was safe? With all the information that I know now, I do wish that we would have evacuated that night. We did choose to self-evacuate on Saturday evening because there were just a lot of odors. It just smelled like the sweet, odd chemical smell, and it just kept getting worse. The fires were still burning, even though that they were more contained. And then we were starting to hear some rumblings that there were very dangerous chemicals on the train, primarily through social media. I have a healthcare background, and so I was Googling these health safety data sheets for chemicals like vinyl chloride and ethyl hexylacrylate. And even though I have a science background, I had never heard of these chemicals before, and it was absolutely terrifying seeing that they are highly dangerous, carcinogenic, and linked to a lot of birth defects and health ailments. So we did decide to leave that evening. We were gone for the vent and burn of the vinyl chloride, and we came back a couple of days after the evacuation order was lifted. My family and I did have some acute health symptoms when we came back home, primarily rashes. I had a weird finger issue that was diagnosed as a chemical burn, and I coughed up blood for about a month. Since then, and how I got involved, I would say it's just been a lot of divine intervention. I'm a very religious person, and I like to say that God qualifies the called and doesn't call the qualified. And so for whatever reason, I have been on a path to advocacy ever since then. I will say too, something that I've learned a lot is that moms will stop at nothing to protect their children. And so really, I've just been trying this whole time to protect my own children and the children in East Palestine and the surrounding areas, whether that be through testifying at the U.S. Senate and meeting with executives from Norfolk Southern, such as Alan Shaw, and even running for mayor of East Palestine last year. So it's been a whirlwind of an experience, and it's still not over.